Hello everyone, it's yet another Mitsubishi Electric videocast, so welcome to everyone who signed up. My name is Piotr and I will be the host of this meeting. And today I have a very special guest, Hartmut Pütz, who is our factory automation president, so he's running the whole business, and he will be giving us quite a lot of insights today. Hello Hartmut, thank you for being here.
Hello, Piotr. Thank you very much for having me here today. Let me just briefly introduce myself. Again, yes, my name is Hartmut Pütz, and I'm running the factory automation business for Mitsubishi Electric in Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Yeah. So I am very grateful that you are here, and I think you can give us quite interesting insights when it comes to digital manufacturing and, generally speaking, running an organization in different circumstances, as we will discuss today. Okay, so let's start the conversation. I will just mention that please feel free to post your questions in the chat. At the end of the conversation, maybe around 20 minutes before 11 o'clock, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions to Hartmut or to me, please post them in the chat window. But in the meantime, we will start. And my first question would be related to some time in the past. So we are working together for maybe like 4 years now. And I remember that the most difficult time for myself was the COVID-19 pandemic. So we went through some changes in the working style, the way how we do marketing, the way how we handle supply chains. So could you share your experience? How was it to run this kind of organization during pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're very, very right, Piotr. I think with the situation during the pandemic situation starting about 2.5 years ago, personally, I didn't experience anything like this before. I've been going through situations and challenges like the Lehman shock in 2009, 2010. I was going through actually the situation after the Fukushima nuclear power station burst actually about 2012, 2013. But what we've experienced 2.5 years ago is not getting close to anything I've experienced so far. It was so disruptive to our personal lives, but as well to our business lives. All of a sudden, we were not allowed actually getting into the office anymore. All of a sudden, we were not allowed visiting customers or partners anymore. And we had to rethink about, okay, what can we do to still stay close to each other?
Do the business.
And do the business, exactly. I still remember actually our first trials actually with some platforms actually running sort of like digital conferences or even video conferences internally. It happened at the beginning all the times actually that the chat rooms, everything did completely collapse after a short period of time. But somewhat actually we managed our way through it. What was sort of probably the most exciting experience for me is that during those challenging times, we started actually our digital journey. Our digital journey meaning changing the way we are operating, changing the way we can reach out to our customers, changing the way as well how we can collaborate actually internally. And all of that is the result of us putting together a digital strategy. And this digital journey is actually, in fact, it is a journey. Because when I compare actually to what we are doing now, 2.5 years after the pandemic started and what we were doing 2.5 years ago, it's a big difference. Mm-hmm. So we are evolving, we are getting used to new technologies, our customers are getting used to new technologies. We even managed actually through the appropriate content and reaching out to our customers in a digital way during those challenging times to even close business, where nobody ever had thought about that this would be possible, to close actually a contract with a customer without even having seen the customer, without even having a direct face-to-face interaction. Everything worked digitally. And this was actually the most exciting experience for me during that really difficult time in sort of like in starting that digital journey. However, I would just like to make a comment which is very important to me personally. We cannot just live in 100% in a digital environment. I think we still need to have the face-to-face interaction with the colleagues, the private life with friends, with our customers, with our partners, because the communication as such, you cannot reduce to just speaking or showing videos, or even in a video chat. You're losing actually quite a little bit of personal interaction with people. So we still need to find the right balance between continuing our digital journey, but not forgetting at the same time about the personal and face-to-face interaction with all parties.
Once the personal interactions were possible again, then we knew how to adapt it. Yeah?
Correct.
But I think the most important point was that once the digital transformation happened to us, we were able to respond to these huge problems like with COVID-19 pandemic, right?
That's absolutely right, Piotr. And what we can see today is after the pandemic situation is almost behind us, that we are getting used to actually communicating with our customers, with our partners digitally. But at the same time, and this is still a process we are going through, we still need to find the right balance between digital communication and face-to-face interaction. What to me is, in terms of managing the business, is very important that the traditional approach we applied prior to the pandemic situation, like a customer is calling, we jump on the next airplane, going to the customer for a 1-hour meeting, flying back home, spend the whole day traveling, generated a huge cost actually going there. And now those days, people already just by themselves, without actually being forced actually to do so, they're thinking about, okay, do I really need to go to see the customer? Or would it be good enough for the time being just having some digital communication with the customer? And this is actually where we are seeing that the behavior of the organization is changing.
Yes.
Because of the challenges during the COVID times.
And those changes and all the lessons that we have learned in the last, let's say, 2 years have proven to be very important, because it seems COVID-19 pandemic, as hard as it was only a beginning, right? So could you elaborate on the current situation, where we are at right now?
Very much, unfortunately, it's exactly that way. When we thought actually that the COVID-19 pandemic situation with all the lockdowns and everything and all the difficulties was sort of like the worst actually we've ever experienced. Now let's put our attention to the war in the Ukraine. And this is actually, to me, a very particular situation and scenario, because right now, today, we're sitting actually in a studio in Warsaw. And Warsaw is the next neighbor to the Ukraine, and a couple of 100 kilometers from where we are sitting, now recording actually that podcast. A disastrous war is going on. And of course, as a result of that war in the Ukraine, the energy prices actually did skyrocket. There is the fear actually that over the winter time there's not enough gas actually for people heating their homes, and not talking about just people's home, but as well the economy, the business. Every aspect of our business is reliant on energy, and energy at affordable prices. And now, as a result of the Ukraine, we see actually energy cost skyrocketing. It's more than twice, maybe even triple of what it has been 12 months ago. If you talk about the supply chain, yes, we are quite reliant, as many other companies as well on our manufacturing bases in China, which is causing actually completely different challenges for us, not only in terms of the frequent lockdowns in some regions in China, but as well from a logistics perspective. Because of the challenges in our manufacturing base, we pretty much have to fly in all the components by air. And the air freight cost is more than 10 times what it has been actually about 12 months ago. So again, another set of challenge. So how does this relate actually to our learning during the COVID time? When I mentioned before, we started actually a digital journey during the COVID time, understanding actually how we can run our business, I would say, in a hybrid kind of mode. Hybrid mode meaning partially supported by digital concepts, digital processes, but as well, of course, having some face-to-face meetings. This is now helping us to overcome actually, to some extent, the increase in operating cost, because we are getting more efficient by using and applying digital technologies ourselves in our daily lives. Again, taking the example, not applying actually the default approach, jumping on an airplane, visiting the customer if the customer is calling, but trying to figure out a more effective way to interact with our customers. And the learning actually during the COVID time really helps us to address the next set of challenges being ahead of us.
I know that you don't like the word crisis because you are always searching for like positives in every situation, but the current situation with energy and current situation with supply chains, can we call it actual crisis?
Again, you're right. I'm trying to avoid actually that term crisis as much as possible. But I think looking at what happened to the world the last couple of months, I think it is actually fair to say that we are in the middle of a crisis, and that we are in particular in the middle of an energy crisis. And what is sort of like quite difficult for me actually trying to find the right balance is that we are living in this energy crisis. At the same time, actually, we need to try to reduce the carbon footprint. Because I think our climate is not waiting until the war is behind us, but the climate is changing as we speak. So despite the situation that energy cost is skyrocketing, that we are not ready actually with renewable energies yet, we still have to reduce our carbon footprint. And one way actually to do this is applying more and more digital technologies in our daily life, in manufacturing, but as well in how we manage actually supply chains overall.
Actually, that would be my next question, because again, looking back to the COVID-19 pandemic, it seemed like once we were forced to go to digital transformation, sooner or later, the tools were available. So they were not perfect, maybe, like you mentioned issues with connecting with people.
Yeah.
But actually, the tools were there.
Yeah.
And the digital transformation that we started there was possible thanks to all the tools in the IT spectrum and otherwise. They were available, and we could just reach out to them. And I think I would compare this situation very much to the current challenges, being energy crisis, supply chain issues, and so on, and the technologies of digital manufacturing. Because at the end, everyone is talking about it, and those technologies are available on the market, and they can probably help companies to overcome problems. So I think we could focus a little bit on those technologies related to digital manufacturing. And from your perspective, which technology is the most impactful on manufacturing companies in particular to overcome these existing issues?
Okay. Yes, there are actually throughout the last, I would say, couple of years, there have been certain aspects of technologies being developed or having evolved. And I think during the digital transformation, there are certain aspects of technology which are probably going to be the most disruptive. And to me personally, the most disruptive piece of technology which is evolving and is playing a more and more important role in our daily lives, but as well in manufacturing and in supply chain management, in any aspect of running our business, is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence in the sense that it helps us actually to drive actually the right conclusions based on the correlation of a massive amount of data. And thinking about a massive amount of data, everybody is, of course, immediately thinking about big data. But the big question to ask is, should AI, artificial intelligence, only be applied in a big data environment, or can it not be applied in a sort of like a little bit more sort of like compressed way?
Mm-hmm. And that's what we would usually offer as an organization. So not starting in a big holistic way, but focusing on like a specific issue in the production and applying the AI technology there. Right?
Yeah. And I think what is important as well to understand is that, and this is the advantage of working for an integrated technology company, that we do have actually a number of research and development centers around the world developing fundamental technologies, which are then going to be applied to the different aspects of our business. And our AI engine is a result of that development. At the end of the day, our AI engine actually does fit actually on pretty much a small chip. And why on a small chip? The objective of that development at the time was developing AI capabilities, being independent actually from a communication network, and being independent from big server farms. I'm not sure actually if you have processes which are sort of like critical, whether you want to rely actually on the availability of a communication line, whether you want to rely actually on the availability of a GSM network or the availability of a server farm. Our view is that artificial intelligence, of course, in a sort of like not in such a high-spec way as having AI sitting in a big data room on server farms, but on a small chip in a piece of equipment. And our approach is to AI to help companies identifying critical processes in their manufacturing or possibly as well in their supply chain, and making those critical processes becoming intelligent by applying artificial intelligence. And you don't need to make a whole factory being run by artificial intelligence or being supported by applying artificial intelligence concept. If you just focus initially on the first critical pieces of equipment, like it could be a pump, it could be a single machine, making those processes becoming intelligent or more intelligent, this is actually what we believe actually is a very valuable approach to customers to consider.
And I believe it's also a very realistic approach, because when you mention you don't have to make the whole factory run by AI. In my opinion, that would be something, if someone starts like that is probably a recipe for disaster. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure whether that's a recipe for disaster. I wouldn't go that far, but at least it is not the most cost-effective way to do this. I think I was brought up actually with looking at the concept of going for the low-hanging fruits first, making the biggest impact actually with the first couple of steps, rather than trying to solve a problem or a challenge holistically, but just cutting this into sort of like different pieces. And this is exactly what we're trying to do with our AI approach. We make, for example, we see a robot sitting next to us. We make a robot becoming intelligent actually by applying AI technology. We make our servo drives becoming more intelligent by applying artificial intelligence. So there's no need actually to try to holistically make a whole factory becoming intelligent if you can start off actually with a small step-by-step approach, making individual pieces of equipment in the first step being becoming intelligent. Of course, the overall ultimate vision is to have actually all the correlations and all the connecting points in the factory being recognized, being integrated, and making the overall factory becoming more intelligent. But again, the vision is the same. The approach towards reaching out to that vision is a little different, actually looking at our AI approach.
Yeah, I think this bottom-up approach is also visible when we discuss our software package for analytics, which is called MaiLab. I think we can show a small video that is explaining that software package. Basically, MaiLab is a solution that was designed in this way to help organizations start small. Mm-hmm. So once you input the data, basically this data will be kind of pre-processed, and the software itself will suggest some scientific methods that you could use, mm-hmm. and it can give you like initial conclusions. Mm-hmm. So before you implement like a big data science process, you can actually try it out, yes, with the software. And I believe this is exactly like a bottom-up approach. And maybe I will ask a follow-up question. I think we have plenty of time to discuss this, because this MaiLab software would essentially behave like a replacement of a data scientist. So instead of having someone, some professional who would analyze all this information and start, modeling the data, the software kind of does it for you so you try it out. Mm-hmm. So do you think that this kind of approach could actually replace people like data scientists in organizations, mm-hmm. or it's too far?
Well, I don't think actually that this approach will replace the need of data scientists. There's definitely, for sure, there is a big space for big data. And as soon as we're talking about big data, we need a data scientist. The big question we need to ask ourselves is, do we need to have a data scientist for any kind of problem solving or addressing certain challenges? And this is actually where we believe that there are areas, particular areas where you get close to the plant floor, close to the automation layer, where the application of AI to data elements being collected doesn't require a data scientist. Again, I'm not saying that there's no need for data scientists anymore. There is an overwhelming need for data scientists in a big data environment. But when we are looking at our focus area, focusing on the plant floor, focusing on the automation layer, focusing on the very traditional OT layer, there are many, many challenges which need to be addressed with the help of MaiLab, for example, as well with the help of another tool like EcoAdvisor for sort of like energy saving purposes, where we use our own artificial intelligence engine to correlate all the different kind of data in MaiLab or in EcoAdvisor to draw actually conclusions and to give actually the operators some advice where to focus on. We are not sort of like automatically addressing the conclusions or executing the conclusions, this is still actually down to the operating people to take the final decision. But we do give them decision support. And I think this is what this concept is all about. It's not trying to automatically solve problems and to interfere with the manufacturing process or with the supply chain processes, but to give people advice about where to focus on and where to sort of like take actions.
Yeah, and the more advices you can create, I mean, from different types of equipment, the better for the maintenance and the better for the production, I guess. So that's why, yet again, the bottom approach is better. Huh?
Absolutely, and I can just, I'm always sort of like smiling a little bit if I look back actually probably about maybe 30 years ago when people were trying to connect actually the automation layer the first time with the ERP layer. And we had some discussions with some ERP companies about real-time data collection. And at that time, actually, for ERP companies, real-time data collection was sort of like, every second a data element. And if you now look at what we mean by real-time, we are generating hundreds of thousands of data points every second. Yeah. And this is actually the challenge, actually, looking at those vast number of data points, correlating those to each other, like pressure, for example, like energy consumption, whatever actually you would like to measure. Mm-hmm. And those thousands and thousands and thousands of data points correlating to each other, coming up with a number of different scenarios and conclusions. This is exactly where we believe AI actually is playing a major role and will continue playing a major role.
And it's, quite visible that generating the data or having the data is not a problem, because we have a lot of information already somewhere in the factory. But making sense of the data, that's the real issue. Yeah. This is something we can address with proper adoption of AI. Correct. Not only AI, also other data science methods, but AI being in the forefront. So
well, if you are staying actually close to the plant floor, close to the automation layer, I think you can actually instantaneously draw conclusions out of the data being generated. You don't need to go through the process of transforming the data actually through edge layer-based capabilities into a big data environment. You just can do this pretty much by even the operator of a piece of equipment who can actually focus on optimizing in his small area of responsibility his piece of equipment.
Yeah. Okay, so we have AI being probably, maybe most impactful technology in terms of digital manufacturing. Any other examples that you would like to mention? Which other area is very important these days?
I think the overall topic today is digitalization in manufacturing and as well as supply chain. Or what we were discussing at the beginning, starting actually a digital journey. And one important aspect of the digitalization in manufacturing and supply chain management is the digital twin. And the digital twin is helping companies to simulate, to monitor actually how a change to a process would actually affect other processes, but in a digital way.
Mm-hmm. So, digital twin being an enabler of flexibility in a factory, right? So you are able to generate a machine vision for a machine, a concept of a machine before even trying it out in the physical space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. And I would even go a step further than that, Piotr. It's one area, one focus area, looking at the simulation of a new machine and designing a new machine or designing a new line in sort of like using the digital twin technology. If you look at the majority of the investments right now going into manufacturing, we're talking more about kind of brownfield type of scenarios rather than greenfield type of scenarios. We are talking about applying robot technologies to existing manufacturing processes. And the way it's done actually today without the digital twin technology is somebody is sort of like designing how actually a robot can be integrated into an existing line, helping actually this line becoming more digital, more flexible, more efficient. But what are you doing? And the way it's done right now is that an engineer is going actually to that piece of equipment, to that line, teaching the robot actually how to operate in this environment. And you can actually replace this process with the use of a digital twin. Sometimes, yes, it's probably too much of an effort if you're talking about a single robot for sort of like an end-of-line palletizing. Probably you don't need a digital twin. But if you want to complement a manufacturing process by using multiple robots in one cell, it is almost impossible doing this through traditional processes. And this is actually where the digital twin is playing a major role. It helps you actually to reduce the risk, to reduce actually the time, actually the commissioning time, and to make this entire process of using automation technology, using the example of a robot, being more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you are right. I think that is probably the second most important technology to consider. And this is also, I believe, another example of the bottom-up approach. So we have this package called Gemini, and that's the software that we use as a digital twin. And this is, again, a very good example how do you start small. So you can establish, first of all, a small size machine, put one robot, put second robot in the digital space. You can analyze the operations, and only then you will actually commission the actual machine on the factory floor. And once you actually start doing this in the virtual world, the commissioning later is also much reduced. Yeah?
And you're making a very important point there, Piotr. It is about almost like trying out actually how far you can stretch a process to become automated or digitalized. I think if you are doing this sort of like in a real environment, your ability actually to try out things is a little limited, yes, because you can only afford a limited number of mistakes. But in a digital environment, you can even create sort of like crazy ideas and just try those crazy ideas. You would probably never try actually in a real environment, but you try this in a digital environment, and then see whether the crazy idea is really too crazy for the process, or whether this crazy idea is helping you making a step change in efficiency.
Yeah, because sometimes you need crazy ideas to perform, right?
Absolutely.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we covered two technologies. Of course, we could be talking about many other. I think one big area would be Internet of Things to consider when it comes to digital manufacturing. But I think the time is running. So I have one more question to you. And the question is related to basically why us. So we have a couple of ideas, we have different technologies, but those technologies are generally speaking available. So why would you recommend customers to work with us, with Mitsubishi Electric as a supplier?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would not actually relate this question directly back to why Mitsubishi Electric. But I would like actually to rephrase that question in a little bit different way. Like, why are sometimes, or I would say sometimes, Japanese companies more efficient in manufacturing compared to other companies? Because this question actually indirectly reflects why to take a closer look at Mitsubishi Electric. One of the reasons why Japanese companies are probably a little bit more efficient in manufacturing is that they have actually invented the Kaizen kind of operating principle, meaning actually to take a big challenge, to cut the big challenge into smaller pieces, and to step by step approach those smaller pieces and solve actually the smaller challenges. It's quite understandable that it's easier actually solving smaller challenges rather than trying actually to solve a big challenge in a kind of a holistic one-step approach. And if you look at the Kaizen approach, this conceptual approach, you find in many, many things we are doing as a company in the automation and digitalization space. We are talking about AI. Our AI approach can somewhat be linked to the Kaizen approach, because we are suggesting to identify challenges in a sort of like in a condensed way, applying actually technology to solve that smaller challenge, and then step by step addressing actually a number of smaller challenges. We are solving actually the much bigger challenge. So this is actually related to how many Japanese companies are operating in a manufacturing or in a supply chain environment.
I would make one comment that we experience a lot of different type of issues in the last decades, so to say. So you mentioned the Lehman shock. We spoke about pandemic in quite a lot of detail. And it seems the Kaizen approach was always out there, yes? Mm-hmm. So all of the big Japanese manufacturing companies always rely on the Kaizen approach with different types of modification, but this is always the same concept.
Yeah.
And it seemed it worked through time.
Yeah.
Very good. So this is, I think, a good wrap up. However, I think there is one more question I could ask, and that would be related to different types of integration between different chains, because we discussed the supply chain challenges, which are quite apparent these days. And I think one of the concepts that we promote, which is e-factory, always speaks about integrating manufacturing and supply chains. Could you elaborate why this matters and why this kind of visibility between chains makes sense to organizations?
I think when we're talking about integration of business processes generically, we can go back actually more than 30 years, 35 years. When I was at the university, I was brought up actually with a concept called at that time computer integrated manufacturing. It was actually already at that time to digitally integrate business processes horizontally and vertically. What we're doing today is with the Internet of Things and new technologies, we are basically integrating or try to integrate everything with anything. But the concept is the same, still integrating business processes. And the e-factory concept from Mitsubishi Electric was sort of developed about almost 15 years ago. At that time, nobody was thinking about using the internet or IoT-based technologies to integrate business processes. But still, integrating the supply chain processes with manufacturing, providing visibility of the manufacturing into the supply chain, at the end of the days, even into the demand of an individual customer, will help us to become much more responsive to our customer needs and to fulfill the customer demand. And this sounds a little bit strange, actually, those days where we are still suffering from challenges actually on the delivery side. But without getting the visibility as to what is the customer demand, what is actually sitting as stock alongside the entire supply chain, what needs manufacturing to be focused on, without actually those linkage and integration, it is going to be very difficult to manage a business. And yes, are we doing this right at this point in time? I think it's part of our journey, I would say. We were starting to talk about at the very beginning, like starting a digital journey, and the integration actually of the supply chain and manufacturing processes, even up to our customers and our component suppliers, is a critical part for us to be able to sustain the existing challenges, but as well the new challenges being ahead of us. So again, I think it's a very nice conclusion to myself, starting actually what we learned actually during the COVID pandemic environment, what we have implemented in terms of digitalization, digital concepts during the current challenges, or addressing the current challenges, but even moving on now into the future, continuing actually on our digital journey, will help us actually to become more responsive and to provide even better customer service than today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Hartmut. I think that's a very nice finish words, as I would say. I will try to sum it up a little bit, and I will keep you here for maybe another 20 minutes to answer some questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But when I would try to summarize what we discussed, so pandemic has taught us some lessons, and I don't want to say it forced us to go through digital transformation, but at the end we did it because of the pandemic. And then with all of these strategies that we set up at that time, we were able to face the current situation and current challenges that are unfortunately ongoing, for example, in this year. Yeah? So when discussing the e-factory concepts, integration of and creating a visibility between different chains, this is yet another strategy together with all of the digital manufacturing technologies to respond to future issues. Because we might think that today is really the worst situation that we can be, but we don't know.
You can always draw the analogy, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we are not 100% sure whether it's a train approaching us.
Right. Exactly. So I think the conclusion should be that adopting proper digital manufacturing strategy can protect you from what can be coming in future.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very interesting point to make at the end. Thank you for this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot, but we still have a couple of minutes to address some questions. There are a couple of those. However, I especially like the one because I am pretty sure I know what you will say. But to be serious, it's a valid question. So, considering the current situation in Europe that we are like right now, do you think this will lead Mitsubishi Electric to abandon Europe a little bit and focus on production in Asia and business in Asia?
Personally, I believe the exact opposite is going to happen. I think what we've learned actually over the last years, 2.5 years, is that being too much dependent on a single country as a manufacturing base. And in our case, we are quite dependent on China as a country with our manufacturing base. that has proven actually to be not the optimum sort of like scenario. Of course, China, in for their own good reasons, apply a different strategy actually to address the COVID-19 situation, which leads actually to numerous lockdowns, even in the very near sort of like past, which of course causing problems for us because we need to shut down our manufacturing. We cannot produce enough components actually and products for our customers, leading as well to this delivery situation. So having said that, having recognized that the dependence actually on a single country is probably not the best way to run a business, I'm pretty confident that we will diversify our manufacturing supply chain, meaning that we will implement and that we will start manufacturing capabilities in different regions. We've started actually, I think about a couple of months ago, to build a new factory in India, which is the first step actually towards diversifying. We are actively discussing now where we should have actually new manufacturing locations out of China. And of course, Europe is one of the target regions. Whether we can and will have manufacturing in Europe, I don't know yet. But what is for sure is this sort of one of the learnings actually from the pandemic situation is that in order to run the business sustainably, you cannot rely too much actually on one single region.
Absolutely. But I think this question is very valid because right now we are in not such a great place when it comes to all of these problems that Europe is facing.
Yeah.
But I think one important observation is that in the in the COVID-19 pandemic, Europe proven to be very resilient. Yes, as you mentioned, like in case of China, there was a lot of issues, and probably there are still some problems related to the virus. Mm-hmm. And Europe overcome the issue quite easily. I mean, not easily, but quickly.
Yep.
And I think that's proving that even that the continent has its problems, we still are able to overcome issues with whatever it is, innovation, good knowledge base, whatever it is, we are able to overcome it. So obviously Europe will become and will stay definitely an important manufacturing hub.
And I will give you even another thought actually about the same topic. One aspect is being more responsive to our customer demand. The closer we can actually be producing our products to our customer base, the better it is.
Right.
We are all talking about reducing our carbon footprint. Does it make sense actually having actually all our components being shipped all the way from China or Japan to our European customer base from a CO2 footprint perspective? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And this is driving as well, besides actually the proven resilience of Europe as a manufacturing location. This is actually including the CO2 footprint consideration is a very important aspect.
Yes.
And it's even actually, if you look at our overall company values and vision, being involved actually in helping reducing the CO2 footprint, looking at the manufacturing chain and the supply chain is one important way actually of living up to what we are talking about.
Mm. Yeah, I think usually these kind of challenges drive innovation, and I think some technological innovations are in front of us. Okay. Maybe not a question because I don't see a question mark at the end, but there is a small comment. So there is a person who used to work in a global Japanese company, and then he learned all about the Kaizen, and then he applied this Kaizen know-how to his own company, and he can confirm that it is true that Kaizen companies who use Kaizen are much more effective than those who don't.
Very happy to read this or hear this. Yeah,
we have a confirmation that this is correct.
Yeah.
No question here.
Very nice.
Okay, I think we have still a little time, so I will ask maybe one more. Not sure which one to choose, but maybe that one. So we spoke about the AI and Mitsubishi Electric approach to AI. I think you spoke about this a little, but could you elaborate how our approach to AI is different from cloud-based, big cloud-based platforms for machine learning and so on? Mm-hmm. How those are different from each other?
Mm-hmm. I think if you look at the cloud-based platforms, and there is a huge space for those kind of applications sitting in a massive cloud environment. The big question is, and again, the funny thing is, the more we talk about this and the more we think about this, it's related to a Kaizen approach. Do you really want to, or can you address actually big, massive challenges holistically? I think the cloud-based AI engines, machine learning, deep learning kind of concept, with the help of, we're talking about data scientists, yes, they approach the challenges holistically. What we are doing is, in our approach, we are looking at this in a step-by-step approach. We don't need big cloud systems. We don't need server farms. We don't need actually data scientists to help customers to take tactical and operational decisions. Our AI approach is not so well suited for environments where customers want to take strategic decisions, but tactical and operational decisions which need to be taken at the operational layer, this is actually where our AI approach can play a major role.
Right. I think I can make additional comment which is related to let's say the technology itself. So I think this question might be coming from the fact that with the cloud computing, well, cloud computing is very scalable. So you can actually create a very small cloud environment when you can test many different things. So I think this is also kind of starting small. However, I think what is the difference? Okay, you might have a small environment for artificial intelligence testing in the cloud that you formed, but actually getting data, the right data from the production to that cloud is the hassle, in my opinion. Because with the embedded AI technologies like MaiSart, you basically embed it on small chip, as you said, and you put it in the robot arm, and then that AI has all the knowledge necessary to perform its operations. Mm-hmm. In case of cloud, we would have to connect this robot somehow to the cloud and start generating all this data from the robot to the cloud, which is not really starting small. It's actually starting big.
and I would even throw in another thought, actually, we didn't touch base on so far, Piotr, which is cybersecurity. Because if you apply actually our AI locally to a piece of equipment, you don't have any cybersecurity issue. If you are connecting actually a piece of equipment to a cloud-based system, you very seriously need to consider cybersecurity. I'm not saying that this is an unsolvable problem. It is solvable, that's for sure. But does it justify the effort you need to take to make the connection cyber secure or somewhat cyber secure, but only wanting to try in a very small environment? This is the big question to ask. And our AI approach doesn't require any massive investment into cybersecurity kind of issues.
Yes, that is also very important. Okay, knowing you, I probably shouldn't ask this question because you can talk about this for a long time, but let's say that you have only 5 minutes. Okay. And the question is something that we didn't touch today, but it is a question about the position of humans in the digitalized world. So we discussed all of these different strategies and technologies that you can use. AI sometimes is treated as something that can replace humans and so on. So how do you see the role of human in the, let's say, factory 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. Only in 5 minutes.
Big challenge. I would like actually to start again based on my own experience, which is now dating back probably 35 years. I was actually doing an apprenticeship at a major car manufacturer in Germany. And I spent as well a little bit of time at the motor assembly line. And at that time, actually, motor assembly line was such that there were actually always groups of people taking actually components and using those components to assemble actually a certain engine. And yes, it was following the old Ford principle, having people always doing the same sort of like mounting the same 2-3 different components. If you look at a factory today, there's almost no human intervention anymore in assembling a motor, whether it's a traditional combustion motor or whether it's now an EV motor. So the factory has changed. Does it mean actually that all those people are doing actually the work, having done the work 35 years ago, are completely obsolete? I don't think so. I think it's just the skill profile of people does change. Are we getting now in 5 or 10 years to a factory without any human beings? I don't think so. I think there is going to be the time. I don't dare to predict whether it's going to be in 15 years or 20 years or 30 years where we can actually run entire factories without human intervention. But still, people would be required to take certain level of decisions. Because the fundamental and maybe even philosophical question to ask is, do we really want to give our lives actually into the hands of artificial intelligence?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And that's the reason why we need to draw a fine line. As well, at this point in time already, we need to draw the fine line how much we want to extend the use of AI and how much actually do we still want to be able to take our own decisions. People are now talking already about service robots. Will those replace the maintenance engineers? Theoretically, yes, they could. But do we really want to do this? Having actually all our processes just relying on robots, or robots and other pieces just using artificial intelligence? I think, to me personally, this is stretching it so far. And there are so many movies existing about those kind of topics where all of a sudden artificial intelligence starts living sort of like an independent life. And I think this is actually where we need to be very careful about. So I think that's the reason why I could actually talk for hours about that question. But it's again, it has a philosophical aspect to it as well. Theoretically, yes, it's possible to have actually factories without any human intervention even today. Is this really what we are striving towards? Personally, I believe we need to be very conscious about the limitations of technology.
And, at the end, you do what is worth the money. And I don't see anyone trying to implement this. it's clear that every factory needs supervision of humans, and no one is arguing about it. I think, pop culture is taking over this communication, so maybe we need to do this kind of podcast more often to talk about the reality.
Yes.
But perfect. I think when you started talking about what happened 25 years ago, I couldn't believe that you will finish on time, but you did. So I think we will finish now, and I will answer the rest of the questions separately over the chat. So thank you very much for being here today with me and with Hartmut. Hartmut, thank you very much for this, and hopefully see you next time.
Definitely, Piotr. It was a pleasure. Thank you to everybody listening and watching.